I handed my parents a check for $20,000, every penny I had saved. They cried and thanked me for saving their family home. 3 weeks later, they told me to never come back. "We don't need your judgment anymore," my father said, coldly closing the door in my face. I later discovered they had used half my money to fund my stepbrother's business venture, the same stepbrother who had never helped them once. They had even sold my childhood belongings at a yard sale the very next day. For 5 years, I worked and planned in silence. I climbed the ranks at my investment firm, building power and resources. They betrayed me when I gave everything to save them. Now their financial security is crumbling again. This time I won't offer help. This time I'll make sure they understand what it truly means to lose everything. I was 6 months away from buying my first real home when the call came. My mother's voice trembled with desperation I had never heard before. "Michael, we are going to lose the house. The bank is foreclosing in 30 days. I sat in my sparse apartment, staring at the investment portfolio I had built over 8 years of 70-hour work weeks. The numbers represented freedom, my escape from the cycle of financial insecurity I had watched my parents struggle with my entire life. "Have you tried negotiating with the bank?" I asked, already knowing the answer. My father's pride had always been his weakness. He would rather sink than ask for help. "Your father will not even speak to them anymore. They are asking for $18,000 to stop the proceedings, plus fees." Her voice broke. "I know it is a lot, but it is your childhood home, Michael." It was manipulation, subtle but familiar. I had recognized their patterns years ago. The careful way they would frame requests to maximize guilt, the strategic deployment of family obligation. But this was not about a few $100s for car repairs or utility bills. This was the house where I had grown up, where 3 generations of my family had lived. "I will see what I can do," I said finally. Marcus cornered me in the break room the next day. We had started at Meridian Investment Group together, though he came from family money while I had worked my way through state college. "You are not seriously considering it, are you?" he asked, eyeing me over his coffee. "How many times have they done this to you?" "It is different this time," I argued. "It is the house." "It is never different," he countered. "They will take your money and find another crisis next month." I ignored him, spending my lunch hour calculating how much I could liquidate without completely derailing my future. The answer was clear but painful. All of it. 3 days later, I stood in my parents' kitchen, a cashier's check for $20,000 in my hand, every cent I had saved since graduating. My mother hugged me with tears in her eyes. My father, gray-haired and stooped now, managed a gruff nod that was his version of profound gratitude. "This is the last time," I said firmly. "You need to get your finances in order." "Of course," my father agreed, too quickly. "We have learned our lesson." I should have recognized the lack of actual remorse in his eyes, the calculating glance he exchanged with my mother. But I wanted to believe them, needed to believe that this sacrifice meant something. 3 weeks later, I stopped by unannounced with pizza, thinking we could discuss financial planning strategies. As I turned into their street, I spotted a familiar car in the driveway, my stepbrother Craig's new Audi. The same stepbrother who had not contributed a dime to helping our parents in years. I hesitated before approaching the house, confused by sudden laughter filtering through the open windows. Through the kitchen window I saw them, my parents and Craig, toasting with champagne glasses, looking more carefree than I had seen them in years. "To new beginnings," Craig was saying. "Mom, Dad, I could not have done this without you." "We always believed in your vision," my mother replied warmly, with the genuine pride she had never once shown for my achievements. I knocked, the pizza box suddenly heavy in my hands. The laughter cut off abruptly. My father opened the door, surprise quickly replaced by irritation on his face. "Michael, we were not expecting you." "Clearly," I replied, the scene inside now visible. Blueprints spread across the dining table, a bottle of expensive champagne. Craig, looking smug and satisfied. "What is going on?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand with sickening clarity. "Craig is starting his business," my mother explained, no trace of shame in her voice. "We have helped with the initial investment." "Initial investment," I repeated. My gaze fell to the blueprints, the formal documents beside them. "With what money?" The silence told me everything. "You used the money I gave you for the house." "Half of it," my father corrected, as if that made it better. "We paid the bank enough to stop the foreclosure. The rest was an investment in the family's future." "My future," Craig added, raising his glass with a smirk. I set the pizza box down slowly, controlling the tremor in my hands. "You told me you were about to lose everything." "We were," my mother insisted, "but we could not pass up this opportunity for Craig." "An opportunity you have never offered to me," I said quietly. "Despite everything I have done for you." My father's expression hardened. "That is exactly the problem, Michael. You have always lorded your success over us, made us feel small with your financial advice and your judgment. I gave you $20,000. I was not shouting. Somehow that made it worse, the quiet intensity of betrayal crystallizing into something cold and hard within me. "And now you want gratitude?" my father countered. "That is the difference between you and Craig. He gives without expecting anything in return." I stared at them, these strangers wearing my parents' faces. "He has never given you anything. He has given us respect," my mother said. "Perhaps it would be better if you did not come around for a while, Michael. We do not need your judgment anymore." "You do not need my money anymore, you mean?" "We think it is best if you do not come back," my father said with finality. "We have made our choice." I left without another word, the door closing firmly behind me. In my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, something fundamental shifted inside me. The dutiful son who had sacrificed everything disappeared, replaced by something colder and more calculating. The next day, I began investigating what I already suspected. This was not the first time they had manipulated me. Bank records showed a pattern. Each emergency loan I had provided over the years had been followed by unusual spending. My college graduation gift to them had funded Craig's semester in Europe. The urgent roof repair money had purchased my mother's new living room set. The final piece fell into place when I discovered they had sold my childhood belongings at a yard sale the very day after I had given them the check. Trophies, yearbooks, everything I had asked them to keep safe, converted to cash with casual disregard. Sitting in my apartment that night surrounded by evidence of years of systematic betrayal, I made a decision. This was not about money anymore. It was about justice, about consequences. They will understand what they have done, I promised myself, no matter how long it takes. For 5 years, I disappeared from my parents' lives. No calls, no visits, no response to their occasional tentative messages when smaller emergencies arose. Each ignored text message strengthened my resolve. I poured myself into my work at Meridian with cold intensity that caught the attention of senior management. Where once I had been merely competent, I became exceptional. The analyst who could identify weaknesses in any financial structure, who could predict market shifts before they happened, who never hesitated to make the difficult call. "You have changed," Marcus observed one night as we worked late analyzing acquisition targets. "Ever since that thing with your parents." "I have focused," I corrected him, not looking up from my spreadsheets. "Focused on what, exactly?" he pressed. "Because sometimes it seems like you are building towards something beyond just career advancement." He was not wrong. Every promotion, every bonus, every new contact I cultivated had a purpose beyond professional success. I was constructing a weapon, piece by careful piece. 3 years in, I received my first real intelligence about my parents' situation. Craig's business, a pretentious lifestyle brand targeting wealthy millennials, was struggling. The initial investment, my money, had been burned through in 18 months of mismanagement. My parents had remortgaged their home to provide additional funding. I filed this information away, continuing my ascent. Senior analyst became lead strategist, became vice president. I developed a reputation for ruthless efficiency and corporate restructuring. Companies feared when I was assigned to their accounts, knowing I would find every weakness, every inefficiency. By year 4, I had created 3 shell companies through discrete contacts: Adler Holdings, Meridian Acquisitions, and Phoenix Financial. Each served a specific purpose in the architecture of my plan. When Elise came back into my life, a chance meeting at a financial conference, I briefly allowed myself to consider a different path. Smart, kind, unconnected to my past, she reminded me of the person I had once been. For several months, we built something that felt like it could be meaningful. "You never talk about your family," she noted one evening over dinner. "We are estranged," I said simply. "That must be painful," she offered, reaching for my hand. I could have lied, could have preserved what we were building. Instead, I told her everything: the betrayal, the cold calculation that had replaced my hurt, the plan I had spent years constructing. She listened without interruption, her expression growing more troubled. "What do you hope to achieve?" she finally asked. "Justice," I answered. "This is not justice, Michael. It is obsession." She shook her head sadly. "You are allowing them to destroy who you could have been." "No," I corrected her. "I am becoming exactly who they taught me to be." She left that night and did not return. I told myself it was necessary, another sacrifice for the goal I could not abandon. At the 5-year mark, everything aligned perfectly. Through Phoenix Financial, I anonymously purchased the debt of Craig's failing business. Through Meridian Acquisitions, I began buying properties surrounding his retail location, systematically increasing rents and driving away foot traffic. Most critically, I used Adler Holdings to acquire a controlling interest in the regional bank holding my parents' mortgage. A review of their account revealed exactly what I had anticipated. They were 3 months behind on payments, having drained their resources supporting Craig. The bank president was confused by my interest in such a small, troubled account. "It is a personal matter," I explained. "I will handle this case directly." 2 days later, my parents received formal notice of impending foreclosure proceedings. That same week, Craig's business loan was called in for review, with all further credit frozen. The timing was not coincidental. After 5 years of silence, my parents' call came exactly when I had calculated it would. I let it go to voicemail, listening to my mother's desperate message with detached interest. "Michael, please, we need to talk. Things have been difficult and we were hoping, please call us back." I waited 3 days before responding, scheduling a meeting at Fleming's Steakhouse, an expensive restaurant I knew they could not afford. The venue was deliberate, like everything else now. "It is time," I told Marcus, who alone knew fragments of my plan. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, concern evident. "Revenge will not change what happened." "This is not about changing the past," I replied. "It is about ensuring they understand it." They arrived at Fleming's looking diminished. My father's confident posture was gone, replaced by the hunched shoulders of a man under constant stress. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had slipped, roots showing in her hair, makeup unable to hide the new lines around her eyes. I watched them scan the dining room, spotting me at a corner table. Their expressions shifted from anxiety to desperate hope when they saw me. I did not stand as they approached. "Michael," my mother said, leaning in for a hug I did not return. "It is so good to see you." "Is it?" I asked mildly, gesturing for them to sit. They exchanged an uncomfortable glance as they settled into their chairs. "You look well," my father offered. "Very successful." "I am," I agreed. I signaled the waiter. "The 1982 Bordeaux, please." My father's eyes widened slightly at the wine choice, a $600 bottle I ordered without hesitation. "How have you been?" My mother tried again. "We have missed you." "Have you?" I smiled thinly. "That is not the impression I got when you told me never to come back." The bluntness silenced them momentarily. The waiter returned with the wine, pouring 3 glasses. I tasted mine appreciatively while they left theirs untouched. That was a misunderstanding, my father finally said. We were upset, but we never meant for you to disappear completely. And yet I did, I noted, for 5 years. During which, you never once apologized. We are apologizing now, my mother said quickly. We handled everything wrong, Michael, we see that now. Your timing is interesting, I observed. 5 years of silence, broken precisely when you are facing financial ruin again. They had the decency to look embarrassed. We have had some setbacks, my father admitted. Craig's business did not work out the way we hoped. Did it not? I took another sip of wine. How surprising. The bank is foreclosing on the house, my mother said, her voice dropping to a whisper. We do not know what to do. And Craig's business loan has been called in, my father added. The timing could not be worse. Actually, I corrected, the timing is precise. Something in my tone made them both look up sharply. What do you mean? My father asked cautiously. I set my glass down carefully. Reynolds Holdings now owns your mortgage. Bradford Acquisitions owns Craig's business loan. And Phoenix Financial has purchased the commercial property his store occupies. I watched comprehension slowly dawn on their faces. You, my father breathed. You are behind all this. I own those companies, I confirmed, among others. Both. Mother's hand trembled as she finally reached for her wine. Why would you do this? Why would I tell you never to come back after you gave me $20,000? I countered. Why would I use that money to fund the business of a stepson who has never contributed anything to the family? While selling my biological son's possessions at a yard sale, their shocked expressions told me they had never expected me to discover that last detail. That was years ago, my father protested weakly. Yes, I agreed, which gave me plenty of time to plan an appropriate response. What do you want? My mother asked, fear evident now. I want you to understand consequences, I replied. I want you to experience what it feels like when someone you trusted completely betrays that trust. We are your parents, my father said, an edge of anger returning to his voice. You forfeited that claim 5 years ago, I stated flatly. Now you are simply people who owe me money. What happens next? My mother asked quietly. I smiled, signaling for the check. Next, I continue what I have started. The foreclosure proceeds. Craig's business closes. You experience the results of your choices. You cannot be serious, my father protested. You would make your own parents homeless? You made yourselves homeless the moment you betrayed me, I corrected him. I am simply finalizing the paperwork. The check arrived, over $800 for wine we had barely touched and food we had not ordered. I paid it without looking at the amount. Michael, please, my mother begged, tears forming. We made a terrible mistake, we can make it right. That is the fascinating thing about consequences, I replied, standing to leave. By the time you recognize them, it is too late to avoid them. I left them sitting there, my mother openly, crying now, my father staring after me with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. The satisfaction I felt was not warm or triumphant. It was cold and precise, like successfully executing a difficult financial strategy. Phase 1 was complete. They understood I was behind their troubles. They did not yet comprehend how thorough my plan would be. The following month unfolded with the precision of a well-orchestrated financial model. Craig's business loan review concluded with a recommendation for immediate liquidation of assets. As the primary creditor through Phoenix Financial, I attended the liquidation meeting personally. Craig looked unwell, the confident smirk replaced by desperate panic as he watched his inventory being cataloged for auction. There must be some mistake, he insisted to the accountants. We just need more time. The spring collection will turn everything around. The financial assessment indicates otherwise, I replied, speaking for the first time. He turned, really, seeing me for the first time. Michael, what are you doing here? Representing the creditor's interests, I explained calmly. His expression shifted as understanding dawned. You are behind this. Your business failed because it was fundamentally unsound, I corrected him. Poor market research, excessive overhead, inadequate cash flow management, the factors were numerous and inevitable. Our parents gave everything to help me, he said, a note of accusation in his voice. Yes, I agreed. They did. I left him there among the wreckage of our ambitions, knowing he would run straight to our parents with the news of my involvement. The knowledge would be another twist of the knife, the realization that their betrayal had set in motion forces beyond their control. The foreclosure on my parents' home proceeded simultaneously. They attempted to fight it with an attorney, but Phoenix Financial's legal team was vastly superior. The proceedings were expedited based on evidence of prior financial mismanagement. My father tried one desperate countermove, threatening to contact Meridian's board about my personal vendetta. I would not advise that, I told him during a required mediation session. You think your fancy firm wants a vindictive executive? He challenged. Wait until they hear how you have abused your position. I became the largest individual shareholder in Meridian Group last year, I informed him. The board reports to me now, not the other way around. The blood drained from his face as he finally understood the full extent of what he was facing. Not just my anger, but my power, methodically accumulated over 5 years for exactly this purpose. 2 weeks later, my father suffered a minor heart attack from the stress. When I received the news, I felt a momentary hesitation, a flicker of the person I had once been. I sent flowers to the hospital but did not visit. Compassion could not be allowed to interfere with consequences. The community began to take notice of what was happening. My parents had cultivated a carefully crafted image in their social circle, the struggling but proud couple, always generous despite their own hardships. As their financial collapse became public knowledge, they attempted to maintain this facade. I ensured it crumbled completely. Through discreet contacts at their church and community center, I made sure certain documents became public, records of their financial mismanagement, evidence of how they had exploited their own son while presenting themselves as victims. Their social standing, built on decades of carefully maintained appearances, disintegrated in weeks. Former friends stopped calling. Invitations ceased. The community support they had counted on evaporated as people learned the truth. Is this really necessary? Marcus asked when I detailed this phase of my plan. Taking their home and Craig's business makes your point. Destroying their reputation seems excessive. They did not just take my money, I explained. They betrayed my trust, while pretending to be something they were not. The facade needs to fall completely. 3 months after our dinner at Fleming's, the foreclosure was finalized. My parents were given 30 days to vacate the property. They made one final appeal directly to me, a handwritten letter my mother delivered to my office. I read it alone, that evening, noting the shaky handwriting, the tear stains on the paper. She wrote of regret, of the terrible mistake they had made, of losing everything that mattered. She begged for mercy, invoking family, blood. The years before everything went wrong. I placed the letter in my safe with all the other documentation, evidence of the complete cycle, from their initial betrayal to their final understanding of what they had lost. The narrative was nearly complete. All that remained was the final act. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the county courthouse. I attended personally, though I could have sent representatives. Some moments required direct witness. My parents were not present, pride or shame keeping them away. They had moved into a small apartment the previous week, the last of their possessions sold or stored in Craig's garage. I knew these details, because I had ensured I would be informed of every step in their downfall. The auction proceeded quickly. 3 bidders showed initial interest in the property, but withdrew when I continued raising the price well above market value. The auctioneer gave me a curious look when he brought down the gavel, confirming my purchase of the house I had already saved once before. Sentimental value, I explained when he commented on the high price. The following weekend, I visited the empty house alone. Walking through the vacant rooms, I felt oddly disconnected from the memories they should have evoked. This had been my childhood home, but those associations had been systematically destroyed, first by my parents when they betrayed me, then by me as I methodically engineered their downfall. In my old bedroom, I placed a framed document on the bare wall, the receipt for the original $20,000 cashier's check I had given them 5 years earlier. A reminder of where this had all begun. Then I left, locking the door behind me. The final phase began the following week at the annual community fundraiser, an event my parents had always attended, presenting themselves as pillars of the community despite their financial struggles. This year, they had not been invited. I had. As one of the largest donors, I was asked to say a few words. Standing at the podium, looking out at the gathered crowd of community leaders and longtime residents, I spoke plainly about the importance of financial responsibility and family obligation. 5 years ago, I gave my parents $20,000 to save this house from foreclosure, I said, gesturing to a photograph of the property now displayed on the screen behind me. 3 weeks later, they told me never to return. They had used half the money to fund my stepbrother's business venture and sold my childhood possessions at a yard sale. A murmur ran through the crowd. Many knew my parents. Some had attended that yard sale. I tell you this not for sympathy, but as context for what I am announcing tonight, I continued. I recently reacquired the property at auction. Today, I'm donating it to the Community Housing Trust to be renovated and used as transitional housing for working families experiencing financial hardship. The announcement was met with applause, but I was not finished. Additionally, I'm establishing a scholarship fund for students who demonstrate financial responsibility and ethical leadership, particularly those who have overcome family difficulties to succeed. As I detailed the scholarship requirements, I noticed movement at the back of the room. My parents had arrived, apparently having heard about my attendance. They stood frozen in the doorway, comprehending what was happening, their final, complete exposure before the community, whose approval they had craved for decades. My father started forward, anger overriding his embarrassment, but was stopped by several community board members. My mother simply wept silently, her carefully constructed social persona permanently shattered. I finished my announcement to enthusiastic applause, then stepped down from the podium. As I made my way through the crowd accepting congratulations, I saw Craig arrive, attempting to defend our parents against the whispered conversations now spreading throughout the room. He is twisting everything, he insisted to a group of former family friends. They made one mistake. Actually, I interjected, approaching the group, I have documents spanning 20 years of systematic financial manipulation. Would you like to see them? He fell silent, his defense collapsing under the weight of evidence he knew I possessed. I did not speak directly to my parents that night, nor did they attempt to approach me again. Nothing more needed to be said. The narrative was complete: betrayal, judgment, consequences, all witnessed and understood by the community they valued. 3 months later, I attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the renovated house, now divided into 3 affordable apartments for working families. Standing on the front lawn where I had played as a child, I felt neither triumph nor regret, only a sense of completion. Marcus joined me as the crowd dispersed after the ceremony. Was it worth it? He asked quietly. All those years of planning. I considered the question carefully. It was not about satisfaction. It was about consequences, making sure they fully understood what they had done. And now? I looked at the house one last time. Now I am free of them, completely and permanently. That evening, I deleted the tracking protocols I had established to monitor my parents' situation. I no longer needed to know where they lived, what they did, how they struggled. Their story had ended for me. In my office, I closed the file containing 5 years of meticulously gathered evidence and placed it in storage. Then I opened my laptop and began researching property in another city, somewhere I had never been, where no one knew my name or my history, somewhere I could simply exist without the weight of the past. Some would call it running away. I recognized it as the final step in freeing myself completely from people who had proven they were never truly family. They had taught me their most important lesson. Blood means nothing without loyalty behind it. And I had taught them that betrayal always comes with a price. The ledger was balanced. The account was closed.